blasted hell. Someone's been jumping up on my table and futzing with my camera. And I know who it is. Yeah, I know who it is. Ugh. I'm gonna do a thing. I'm gonna do a thing. I'm gonna do a thing. Alright. I have no script, nothing whatsoever. I don't even have a coherent plan here, but I've been really unproductive and I haven't done anything in a long time, so I'm going to do something. Specifically, I want to talk about libertarianism. I kind of had a fire under me to talk about it, but that fire's gone out, but it's dark and late at night and I can't get myself to do anything else, so we're going to do this. See how this works. Libertarianism. God, it's such a broad subject. I guess any political philosophy is. Something I couldn't really talk about in any meaningful way in a short video. But I wanted to discuss, like I'd heard critiques of it earlier today. I'd been reading them. And I kind of want to respond to those a little bit. Because it was a discussion between someone who's sort of libertarianist, more anarcho-capitalist, and someone who's more classical liberal, which libertarianism is very related to those two. But I wanted to specifically talk about a little bit about anarcho-capitalism, a little bit about classical liberalism, and the relation to libertarianism. So very, very broad subjects, but hopefully I can nail those down to something more specific, something a bit tighter. I'm not happy with this camera today for some reason. As an aside, minds.com is something I'm really getting into and really getting invested in. I'm digging it as a format, as a social media venue. If I could abandon some of these others, if it hosted videos better, I wouldn't leave YouTube, but I'd have less to do with it. I check minds.com way more often. But anyway, this is online discussion between multiple people, commentators, schmoes, and so on. And specifically discussing, well, what's the point of libertarianism? Back and forth banter. Someone said something like, to the effect of classical liberalism. I need to start defining some of my terms, or else this is just going to be nonsense. Okay, alright. Alright, so, starting with anarcho-capitalism. Anarcho-capitalism, the premise is absolute minimum government to the point where there is no government, where theoretically, if there is a quote-unquote government at all, like a state government or a federal government even, it is nearly powerless. It's almost, it's almost decorative. The idea is just to make everything privatized, or supported strictly by individuals, voluntarily contributing their time, effort, money, what have you. I could go into the strengths, weaknesses, and so on, but that's not my point. So that's what that is, very briefly. It's like minimal or no government. The term anarchism literally means an-arcane, no rules. And it's, in libertarian spheres, there are a lot of anarcho-capitalists and pure anarchists who chime in. They tend to be philosophical purists. That is to say, anything that deviates from an attempt to move towards pure, systematically supported anarchism, where you have individuals only interacting freely. There is no government per se to tell them what to do. Classical liberalism, what is that? Classical liberalism is a philosophy that emphasizes individual freedom and self-determination, but at the same time, when people refer to classical liberalism in a modern context, 21st century, when someone in 2016 is saying, I subscribe to classical liberalism, They mean that they are much more in favor of federal programs and so on, much less so than a modern liberal, who will emphasize centralized organization a great deal more, but still classical liberalism compared to an anarcho-capitalist is more invested in the state. They believe that it's necessary for defending in personal rights, personal freedoms, which they exonerate. I'm trying to think of how to describe these in terms of the normal left-right dichotomy of conservatives and liberals, and they just don't fit in them anywhere. I mean, I can't call a classical liberal more left than the left. That doesn't make any sense, because usually the left is considered to be highly in favor, today anyway, highly in favor of increasing taxes, wealth redistribution. So a classical liberal wouldn't necessarily be in favor of those things. They wouldn't be as fervently against them as an anarcho-capitalist, but they're not right of that and they're not left of that, so this doesn't fit. Likewise, I've heard a lot of liberals describe anarcho-capitalists as being right-wing, and it's like nothing could be further from that description. Generally, when you say right-wing, modern or at least cliched conservatives in American culture, Republicans, what we really mean to say, against flag burning, in favor of Christianity, military spending. Why military spending is a conservative issue, I have no freaking clue, but it is. None of these things anarcho-capitalists tend to lean on. They tend to be very distance themselves from that. So are they left or right of that? Are they further right? So once again, it doesn't follow. And load up. All right, here we go. Libertarianism. So libertarianism, my first instinct is to say it's halfway between the two, but that's not accurate. That's not accurate at all. Libertarianism is more centrist than anarcho-capitalism. It leans much more towards, look, philosophically, libertarians agree with anarcho-capitalists. They are, I'm going to try to describe this as best I can, they are classical liberals, or classical liberals, or people who more are likely to identify themselves as classical liberals, are more inclined to put the state in a significant position, where a libertarian sees that more, agrees with them, but would see the state as more as of a necessary evil. Okay. So, what is the purpose of the state, of the Fed? It's important to make an eloquent argument of this. And this is kind of why I made this video, because I'm hearing this debate, and yet what's coming from is sort of the libertarian-ish quarter. It sounds dumb to me. It sounds poorly formed. It's more, the state is the dumbs. It's bad, it's evil, authoritarianism, which is a weak argument. I'd like to take a moment and apologize. I am tired and sick, and that's why my eyes are incredibly red right now. Regardless. Briefly. I'm kind of losing my train of thought. It's really late, and I'm tireder than I should be. But I'm dedicated to get this done. Alright. So, what is government? What is it at all? I'm a libertarian, so my view is that it is a means of transferring action, whether that be time, money, effort, attention, whatever, from individuals to various problems that we see, that we all agree need to be solved. Picking something at random, the roads. It's a common, complaint. It's a dumb cliche at this point. You libertarians, who's going to build the roads? Well, private companies will build the roads just like they always do. The idea being, from more of a leftist, centralized theory, being that you need this oversight, a large oversight, federal oversight, to organize a federal highway. And there's something to that. Strictly speaking, just as an aside, libertarians don't object to roads. The just minimal government doing only what is absolutely necessary, roads being one of them. So it's always a dumb argument to hear. But my point being, the purpose of government is to move resources, mostly money, let's be clear, tax money generally, from individuals to these larger programs to deal with large problems that any one individual or even larger groups couldn't, for whatever reason, handle on their own. Road projects, for example, perfect example. Organizing where all these roads go, buying up properties, managing them, maintaining them. What do we maintain? What do we kind of let go fallow for a little bit for budgetary concerns? Do we increase the budget? Do we decrease it? And so on. All these big questions. There is a merit to having a single source for these answers, even if it's not necessarily the best answers you're going to get. Having a single source of them will alleviate potential conflicts. Like what if, say, this person, this county or whatever wants a road to go this way, another one wants it to go a different way. They don't match up or they conflict with one another. Avoid problems by having a central authority. That makes sense. Ugh. God, it's late. Okay. Soldier on. So this is where libertarian theory, by extension anarcho-capitalism, kind of kicks in. If you're moving resources, once again, not necessarily money, but also time, effort, attention, whatever, it's very, very important to do everything efficiently. One of the arguments for anarchism, anarcho-capitalism, you'll see one particular logo, the letter V, appear very frequently on websites and message boards that cater to those discussions. The V stands for voluntarism. Voluntarism. The idea being people should contribute, not just as a philosophy, like, hey, don't force people to spend their time and money and effort on things they don't necessarily agree on. But there, like I said, that's one argument, but I'm not really addressing it. But that the numbers argument becomes, well, it sort of morphs into an ethical argument all on its own. And here's why. If someone needs help for some reason, they need their roads, they need some piece of infrastructure, they need a federal program for whatever reason, whether you agree with it or not, having the federal government take care of it means that there's going to be a collection agency, there's going to be someone monitoring that person for whatever that aspect of their lives, collecting taxes, just the accounting aspect. My point is, there's a huge backbone to extracting money from people and moving it to other people. Like if someone's in a federal program, I have to move money from a lot of individuals, at least one, to another. And in doing so, you have to spend money. Every one of those federal employees is cutting a paycheck. They're not working for free. They're not volunteers. That's that V. So, to collect $1 and move it to someone else, to give someone $1, you have to collect more than $1. This gets a little contentious because there are economists, Paul Krugman comes to mind immediately, and laying all my cards on the table, I think Paul Krugman is full of shit, but the argument is the multiplier effect, that the government does stuff so well that every $1 it collects, it's like it multiplies. It's like $5 somehow. What they may be referring to are the economics of scale, where sometimes it's cheaper per unit to build a lot of something than it is to build them one at a time. So buying stuff in bulk, insurance for example, has some advantages over buying it individually. The problem you run into there is that the federal government, any large centralized authority is going to be so inefficient, so large and encumbersome. Remember, time is money. It takes time for a large organization to manage the accounts and information of hundreds, thousands, millions of people. That time equals money. Are you getting do you want to get a check now or 5 months from now? There's a huge difference between those two, an enormous difference. So, yeah, there might be some multiplier effect. It's not going to be much, and it's completely negated by the inefficiencies you have in working in such a centralized authority. The other problem you run into is prices. Paying for things with subsidies, or, oh, God help you, giving tax exemptions to groups to do the things you want them to do, to sort of nudge them that way, are manipulating prices. And prices are information. Never forget, prices are information. I could do a 2-hour video on that concept alone, but I'm not going to. Not right now, anyway. So that's a problem. So, to give someone $1, for whatever reason, you have to collect more, maybe even a lot more, than $1, like maybe $2 or $3. As opposed to me voluntarily just walking up to someone and giving them $1, that is perfect efficiency. It's only the time that takes me to be aware of that person and hand that money to them is where the potential loss is. Like I said, time is money. You can argue that a centralized authority like a government, for example, or any large program, even a charity or something like that, could reduce that. They're aware of these people ahead of time, so when they collect the money they can move that to them more quickly, but it tends not to work that way as much. Anyway, what it boils down to, I kind of got to get in and get involved here because I'm falling asleep and I'm not feeling very well, is, put it this way. If I can adjust this camera, if I have an individual who needs help, and I am aware that they need to be helped, and I could spend X amount of dollars to help that one person in this way, or I could spend the exact same amount of money, X amount of dollars, and help 2 people, in other words, a more efficient way, assuming resources are finite, and they are, what is my moral obligation between these two? Do I help one person or do I help 2? What is my moral imperative? Not even in terms of how am I going to save myself $1. What is the moral imperative there? Do I help one person or do I help 2? Obviously I help 2. Thus the libertarian preference for efficiency, lean on voluntarism. Off the top of my head, Mitt Romney comes to mind. When Mitt Romney was running in 2012, in my defense, it's late at night. When Mitt Romney was running in 2012, it came to light that he had been, for more than a decade, donating between a quarter and a third of his income every single year to charity. And for some reason this was like they tried to turn that into an attack on Romney, like, he's doing it for tax reasons and his tax something doesn't add up because of that or whatever. Now, to be clear, I'd sooner blow the man than vote for him, but that's really impressive. I don't give a quarter of my income to charity. It's not that libertarians don't believe in helping people, they just believe in a non-centralized way of doing it. That the best way to help people is to help people, to actually volunteer your own time. To turn that around, modern liberals, if you believe that the federal government is a better way to help individuals, defend that. It's obviously less efficient. It wastes more money. Your preference for that is based on what? It's easier? I mean, you only have to go to a voting booth maybe once, maybe twice a year. Yes, I'm fully in favor of that. Punch that little divot, whatever. Go. Problem solved, nothing else required from me. Where I think to properly solve this world's problems, or to address them, you need individual action. It's the federal government can't do it, shouldn't do it. Not for wealth distribution schemes. It's not the way to do it. This argument about whether or not we should pay for contraception and any number of other things, these arguments should go away, because this isn't the place. This isn't like ordering a pizza, where everyone has to agree on toppings or else we don't get the pizza. It should be an individual action. Like if you're very passionate about mental health issues or something, you personally should either volunteer your time, money, or whatever, or maybe even cheerlead for it. Like, hey, work at a fundraiser, or start a charity or something like that, or a charitable giving organization to help people in particular needs for something you wish to draw attention to. It's just, it's not a question of whether, or to put it another way, are people inherently good or evil? If people are good, you shouldn't need this central authority. You shouldn't need the Fed to feed and clothe them. Other people should be able to do it, should be encouraged to do it. If all the people who spent so much time, dear God, the last election cycle, or $1 billion were spent on trying to elect two of the worst candidates in my lifetime, period. No questions asked. $1 billion. Can you imagine what $1 billion held by individuals, what good that could do, how many problems that could solve? And this was just for 1 year. For 2015, the Clinton Foundation and all the money, Donald Trump, the winner, spent. Can you imagine what good could have come of just spending this on individuals, even just spending it on their own households and stuff like that? It's absurd. In my mind, this was going to be like, my first ever 4-minute video. This is going to be 40 minutes long. I can't help it. But you see where I'm coming from. So, if a central authority can't do things more efficiently, then why do you need them? Politicians are always going to be in favor of solving your problems for you because they get paid to do so. They get votes for doing so. Hey, if you vote for me, I'll spend everyone else's money on the thing you like. So, I don't think that can be used as an argument. Certainly not an efficient argument. It's not an efficient way to spend money. The end-all be-all. That's where my argument is going to start. Not necessarily go. There's some moral argument too for freedom, independence, self-determination, and so on. But it's where it's going to end too. It's like, look, this is just not an efficient way to do things. You can help more people, and you can help them in more profound ways, more impressive ways, by having individuals solve problems and not a distant and unknowledgeable authority do it for them. Last point on this. And my last point on this was, something that occurred to me during, like I said, some parts of the discussions I was reading earlier, was the idea that, why do we need a central authority? Like I said, efficiency is not one. Already went into this. Another argument is, finding the problem. Like identifying a specific problem and targeting it. The targeting issue. Where, how do you know where to spend this money, or where we could spend, name a thing the government spends money on, which is absolutely everything, water, roads, electricity, education, everything. How do you know how to reach this individual or that individual? The thinking being that, well, if you don't have a centralized authority, how will you find them? How will you find this person in need? And I think that's actually an excellent argument. That is a very good argument, a very relevant argument. It's almost kind of trumps some of the arguments against a centralized authority. It's a brilliant argument, a correct argument for the 20th century. We don't live in the 20th century, we live in the 21st century. At this point, I don't get my news from broadcast television or the radio at all. I find out about problems by people telling me about their problems, or telling me about something they discovered, or something they saw on Twitter, or something someone else did, or someone they knew, and so on and so forth, branching off to individuals. If someone's in trouble, someone I don't know, a number of their friends will get on Facebook, Twitter, whatever, and say, hey, this dude's in trouble. Can someone, like, get this guy, he needs someplace to stay, or, hey, we're going to do a GoFundMe. Let me get to that point in a second, too. They tell all their friends, who in turn tell all their friends, who in turn tell all their friends, and eventually gets to me. And I've done that before, where it's like, oh, someone did a GoFundMe or something like that. Yeah, sure, I'll throw in, $5-10, no big deal. Or, yeah, you need someplace to stay. Well, shit, a number of times I've had people sleep on my couch, God knows. Well, certainly I'm not the only one, just randomly helping people out. I think that's a better way of doing it. You'll find them better. You'll find them more effectively than the federal government, than the state government, than a local government, more than any government. As individuals in the 21st century, it's been this 21st century for a decade and a half now, for Christ's sake, we are very good at communicating with one another. Everyone has a cell phone. I have a cell phone. I don't even have cell phone service. Everyone has a means of reaching others, or reaching out to others. And as far as how effective are we at getting help to them, better than ever before, absolutely everything has a payment model. A means of transferring money, resources, time, whatever, mostly money though, from one person to another. Facebook, in the instant messenger, there's a little $sign in the instant messenger now. You can just click on that, just randomly give someone $1 or 50 cents. When we first found out about it, we were actually just saying, what does this do? It gives money to someone else? So we just gave like $1 to each other, like trading dollars around. Amazon does payments, Amazon Payments. I would be surprised if Twitter doesn't have something like that. I don't know, really. I'm not a big Twitter creature. But that's my point. Like, everyone has a payment scheme, or, there's a Google Wallet. There's Minds.com is getting its own wallet thing that it's working on. The ways that you can freely, easily, quickly, if not instantly, transfer money to someone in need is incredible. And absolutely everyone has like a charitable giving or a charity or something like that attached to them. I'm going to use Amazon example because they're a big one. They have Amazon Smiles. The way Amazon Smiles works, check this out sometime, it's worth checking out, is that you go to Amazon Smiles, I think it's smiles.amazon.com, and you pick a charity you like. I think I picked American Heart Association or someone like that. And when you go to your Smile page, every purchase you make, Amazon will donate $1 to that, whatever it is. That's pretty awesome, but it's not unique. Everyone does that. So, my point being, we are increasingly gaining the ability to make ourselves aware of the problems of our fellow man. If we can't, and here's the other argument, the last argument for not just classical liberalism, but also modern liberalism, and for God's sake, modern conservatism for that matter, is that we need a central authority to tell people what to do because they're shitty people and they wouldn't do it otherwise. And this is the worst argument in my mind. Because think I was like kind of touching on this earlier. If people are inherently bad, if people are inherently good, and you free them, then they'll solve the world's problems. They'll figure out a way to do it more than some asshole you voted for. They have the impetus to do so. People are good. They want to see problems solved. They want to see people helped. If not, if people are inherently bad, you're not going to legislate them into being better people. You won't do it. And what's more is I don't think you have the right to do it. I don't think it's right to, for their own good sort of attitude. Well, we have to do this thing that might be wasteful or hurtful or expensive, but for their own good, we have to improve them. We have to make flag burning illegal, which is, God, I don't even want to go into that. Or flag burning illegal, or we have to make them save for their future, or we have to do this, or we have to do that, or we have to feed them, we have to clothe them. I think we can, and that's the frustrating part to me, as though the government were something other than people, as though the money it has came from somewhere other than the people being governed. It's like the government has to help them, or else who would? Well, the government is just collecting money from people. Why not just let the people do that themselves? Just did a couple takes. I'm becoming incoherent more than usual. My point is, the philosophy of leaving people alone is not evil or selfish. It's self-determination. I think people are good. I think if you leave them alone, they will help other people. And if you think, some process or some problem or some issue needs more attention, facta non verba, deeds not words. Go do something. Go draw attention to it. It is the easiest thing in the world to get an audience in this day and age. It's absurd how easy, how many ways you could do it. Like between starting a group on, you name it, Google, Facebook, Minds, YouTube, there's so many ways to do that. And when you're doing it, you are doing this. You're not taking someone else's money, because there's lots of different ways to fix problems. And those solutions need to compete as well to find the best one, or the most efficient one, or the most effective one, or whatever. I'm done ranting. I'm going to go to sleep. I'm tired. I'm out.